For 28 years, he thought his father was just a ghost from his mother's past. That morning, in a room full of strangers, everything changed. The office was glass and chrome and far too quiet for 9 a.m. Ryan Mercer adjusted his thrift store blazer for the third time in 2 minutes. He'd worn it to every interview this year, most of which had ended in polite nods and vague promises. He was down to $47 in his bank account, including the coins. The receptionist was a kind-faced woman with a tired smile. "Mr. Mercer. They're ready for you." "Thank you," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. He followed her through a corridor lined with modern art and doors that looked like they led to secrets. Every step amplified the weight of this moment. He needed this job, not just for rent or groceries, but to prove something. To himself. To the world. To the men who left before Ryan ever had a chance to say Dad. The interview room had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of downtown LA that made Ryan feel like an ant in a hurricane. 3 people sat at the table. 2 were suited HR types, polite and practiced. The third was older, tall with silvering hair, a tailored suit that cost more than Ryan's car, if he still had one, and eyes that flicked to Ryan with cool calculation. "This is Mr. Harlan," one of the HR reps said. "He's the owner and founder of the company." Ryan nodded. "Pleasure to meet you, sir." Harlan offered a tight smile. "Likewise." They started with the usual questions: strengths, weaknesses, why do you want to work here, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Ryan answered as best he could. He knew he didn't look the part. No Ivy League degree. No connections. But he spoke with the quiet urgency of someone who'd known hunger and made friends with rejection. Halfway through, Harlan leaned forward. "You're from Bakersfield?" "Yes, sir." "What high school?" "East Ridge." Harlan narrowed his eyes slightly. "You're about 27. 28 next month." There was a beat too long of silence. Harlan's gaze didn't waver. Something flickered behind those eyes. Memory. Recognition. "I knew someone from Bakersfield once," he said, almost absently. "Long time ago." The room was still. Even the HR rep seemed to sense something was shifting. Ryan tried to stay composed. "Small world. What's your mother's name?" Harlan asked suddenly. Ryan blinked. "Excuse me." Harlan sat back, his hands folded on the table. "Your mother." "Just curious." "Linda Mercer," Ryan said, guarded now. Harlan's lips parted slightly. The breath he took in was slow and deliberate. "Linda," he repeated. "She used to work at the Sunoco station off Union Avenue." Ryan's spine stiffened. "Yeah. You knew her." Silence. Long enough that it felt personal. Then Harlan said, almost inaudibly, "She used to be my world." The air cracked. Ryan felt his stomach drop as if the floor had vanished. What are you saying?" Harlan looked at him fully now. Not like a businessman or a CEO. Like a man seeing something he never expected, and maybe didn't want, to see again. "I think I'm your father." The room went silent. A bird flew past the window, and its wings against the glass were the only sound. Ryan's mouth opened but no words came. Everything in him wanted to laugh, scream, run. He'd imagined meeting his father before, sure. But not like this. Not dressed in desperation, sitting across from a man who held his future like a coin between fingers, flipping it. "I didn't know," Harlan said. "Not until now." Ryan stood. He didn't remember making the decision. His chair scraped sharply against the polished floor. "I think we're done here," he said, voice low. Harlan stood too, hands raised slightly. "Ryan." But he was already at the door. Ryan walked out of that glass tower like it was on fire. He didn't stop for the elevator. He took the stairs, 17 floors, each one harder than the last. By the time he hit the lobby, his lungs burned, and the ache in his legs barely distracted from the war zone in his chest. He stepped into the street and the city swallowed him whole. Cars honked. Someone shouted across the avenue. A woman walked past crying into her phone. Life didn't care that Ryan Mercer had just met his father, a millionaire CEO, during a job interview. Life didn't even pause. He wandered. No direction, no plan. He passed a food truck and the smell made his stomach twist. But he kept walking. His mind kept playing the last few seconds over and over like a skipping record. I think I'm your father. He hadn't even said it with emotion. Just realization. Like he'd uncovered a clerical error. Ryan's mother had never spoken his father's name. When he'd asked as a kid, she'd shut down like a storm shelter before a tornado. He's gone, she'd say. He's not someone we need. Well, here he was. And apparently, they did need him. Or Ryan did. Not for money, he'd survived this long without help. But for answers. For the face behind all those nights wondering why he wasn't good enough to stay for. By dusk, Ryan found himself back at his apartment, a 400-square-foot studio above a liquor store with a broken lock and a window that only opened halfway. He collapsed onto the futon and stared at the ceiling like it might rewrite the day. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Same number. On the third try, he answered. Ryan, it's Harlan. Ryan didn't say anything. I know this is a shock. It is for me too. Ryan sat up slowly. You expect me to believe you just figured it out in an interview? I had no idea you even existed. Your mother never told me. We were young. It was brief. But when you said her name, and your age, your face, Christ, Ryan, you look just like my brother did at 28. Ryan's silence spoke volumes. I'm not calling to beg, Harlan continued. I'm calling because you deserve to know. And if you want to talk, just talk, I'm open to that. Ryan almost hung up. Almost. Instead, he said, tomorrow. 1 hour. Public place. No suits, no assistants. There was a pause, then, fair enough. They met at a coffee shop in Culver City. It was neutral ground, halfway between Ryan's world and the one Harlan had built above it. Harlan was already there, in jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than Ryan's monthly rent. He looked out of place. Like someone trying to play a role he didn't rehearse enough. They ordered. Sat down. The silence stretched. I don't want anything from you, Ryan said finally. Noted, Harlan replied. But I want something from you. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Time, Harlan said. A chance to get to know you. Maybe a chance to explain, if you'll let me. Ryan leaned back. You know, my mom used to work double shifts at that gas station. We didn't have a car. Sometimes I'd walk to school with holes in my shoes. And every time I asked about my dad, she'd say he didn't matter. That he was gone. I didn't know if he was dead, or in prison, or just didn't care. I didn't know, Harlan said again, softer. If I had. You'd have what? Ryan snapped. Come back. Changed everything. Harlan looked away. I don't know. Maybe. I'd like to think so. The anger in Ryan's chest pulsed like a bruise. But beneath it, something more dangerous flickered, hope. Hope that maybe this wasn't just another loss. Maybe, just maybe, this time someone was staying. Ryan didn't expect the coffee meeting to change anything. He told himself it was just closure, a final note to a song he never got to sing. But when he left that cafe, there was something else tucked inside his chest, confusion. Possibility. Maybe even a little resentment toward hope itself for not dying off completely. He returned to his normal life, early mornings at the temp agency, afternoons spent sending resumes into the void. But Harlan, he didn't disappear. Not this time. Every few days, Ryan got a message. Sometimes it was simple, thinking of you. Let me know if you want to talk. Other times, it was more complicated. An invitation to lunch. A link to a job opening in one of Harlan's subsidiary companies. A photo of an old gas station in Bakersfield with the note, I drove by this yesterday. Wondered if it was still there. Ryan didn't respond. Not right away. Then, one Thursday, he came home to find an envelope slid under his door. No stamp, no address. Just his name, written in a hand that looked both precise and unsure. Inside, a letter. Ryan. I've made my share of mistakes. Some I regret every day. Not knowing you existed will haunt me for the rest of my life. But now that I do know, I'm not going to run from it. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Just to give me a chance to show you who I am, not as a CEO or some name on a building, but as a man who, against all odds, suddenly has a son. Come see the company. Spend a week shadowing me. No strings. No expectations. Just you and me. See for yourself who I am. If you hate it, or me, you can walk away, and I'll respect that. But if you don't at least try, I think we'll both regret it. Harlan. It was signed in pen, not printed. That detail stuck with Ryan. He didn't sleep much that night. The ceiling didn't have answers, just shadows that looked like old regrets. The next morning, he called the number. I'll do it, he said. 1 week. The office looked different the second time, less intimidating, more curious. Ryan was greeted by a woman named Gina, who smiled warmly and offered him coffee like he was an expected guest, not an intruder. Harlan met him in the hallway. No suit. Just slacks and a button-down. Human armor stripped down. Glad you came, he said, offering a firm but not forceful handshake. Don't make me regret it, Ryan muttered. The week began with meetings, strategy sessions, investment breakdowns, calls with international partners. Ryan sat in the corner, quiet, observing. At first, he assumed Harlan was showing off. But the man was sharp. Focused. Respected. Employees didn't flinch when he entered the room, they listened. Not out of fear, but something closer to belief. By Wednesday, something in Ryan began to shift. Not trust, not yet. But interest. The world Harlan had built was complex and alive. And somewhere in the middle of spreadsheets and business lingo, Ryan saw a version of himself that could belong. Thursday night, they had dinner in Harlan's penthouse. It was elegant but lived in, books on every shelf, art that didn't scream wealth but whispered history. There was a photo near the fireplace of a young woman in a denim jacket, laughing. My mom, Ryan said quietly, surprised. Harlan followed his gaze. She was beautiful. You kept her photo. Always. They ate in near silence until Harlan broke it. I was engaged when I met your mother, he said. Stupid, selfish timing. I didn't tell her. I left town 2 weeks later. Got married anyway. Ryan clenched his fork. I thought about her for years, Harlan continued. But I convinced myself it was just a moment. Something that couldn't have lasted. And now? Ryan asked. Now I wonder how much of my life was built on lies I told myself to sleep at night. The weight of that confession sat between them like a third plate at the table. Ryan didn't reply. But he didn't leave either. On Friday afternoon, Ryan followed Harlan into the company's research and development wing. It was the last stop on the schedule Harlan had meticulously planned. A quiet gesture, like a father taking his kid to the garage to show him what he'd been building all these years. Ryan watched as Harlan interacted with the engineers. He wasn't just a figurehead, he asked real questions, challenged assumptions, celebrated clever solutions. It was the first time Ryan saw him truly animated. Alive. You built all this, Ryan said, walking alongside him past rows of prototypes and testing machines. Harlan nodded. Brick by brick. Mistake by mistake. Ryan looked around. It's impressive. I hoped maybe one day, you'd want to be part of it. Ryan paused. You mean, work here? Eventually. If you wanted. Not because of your name, but because you'd earned it. I'd never hand it to you, that's not how I was raised. Neither was I, Ryan said quietly. They stood at the edge of the floor, overlooking the floor-to-ceiling windows. The skyline stretched in gold and glass. I don't know what to do with you, Ryan admitted. You're not who I thought you'd be. I'm not sure who I thought you'd be either, Harlan said. But I'm glad you're not angry all the time. I am. Just quieter about it now. That night, Ryan went back to his apartment and opened the one box he kept buried in his closet. Inside, photos of his mother, school papers she'd saved, and a letter he'd written at 17 but never mailed. I hope one day you regret leaving. I hope you think about me every night before you fall asleep. I hope you see my face in strangers and wonder what I sound like when I laugh. He read it twice, then burned it in the sink. The smoke stung his eyes, but not as much as the realization that he didn't want to hate Harlan anymore. He just didn't know how to stop. On Sunday, Ryan took a bus to Bakersfield. He hadn't been back in 4 years. Not since his mother's funeral. The town was the same, sun-bleached, tired, stubborn in its survival. He visited the old gas station. It was a taco stand now, but the awning was the same. He sat across the street and watched people come and go, imagining her behind the counter, 24, not yet broken by bills or loneliness. His high school was boarded up. Too few kids, too many budget cuts. He walked the rusted fence line and remembered standing there, waiting for rides that never came. By sunset, he was at the cemetery. Her grave was modest, tucked between an oak tree and a crumbling bench. He crouched beside it and laid down a small bouquet, wildflowers, like the ones she used to pick from the freeway embankments. "Hey, Mom," he whispered. "You were right. He was gone. But now he's back. And I don't know what to do with that." He ran a hand through his hair. "He says he didn't know. I believe him. Part of me doesn't want to. But I do." Wind moved through the trees above. A dry, whispering sound. "I think I might want to know him," Ryan said, barely audible. "Is that okay?" There was no answer. Just the soft creak of the branches, the steady pulse of distant freeway traffic. Back in L.A., Harlan waited. He didn't call. Didn't text. For once, he didn't push. On Monday morning, Ryan walked into the building on his own. "I'm not ready to be your son," he said. "But I'm willing to be your intern." Harlan's face broke into something unguarded. Maybe joy. Maybe relief. Maybe something closer to a second chance. "That's all I could ever ask," he said. 3 weeks into the internship, Ryan was beginning to understand the rhythm of the place. Mornings started early, meetings piled up like bricks, and no decision, even the small ones, happened without someone noticing. The office didn't run on caffeine and ambition alone. It ran on loyalty, memory, and a silent code of hierarchy. Most people didn't know who Ryan was. Just another sharp, quiet guy with a badge and a notepad. But whispers had started. People noticed how Harlan stopped to ask him questions, or how he lingered after team briefings, sometimes just looking at Ryan with something unreadable in his expression. Then came the Friday lunch. It was an internal event, quarterly performance celebration. Everyone from interns to department heads crammed into the cafeteria, laughing over boxed lunches and presentations. When Harlan stood to give his speech, Ryan sat near the back, determined not to draw attention. But Harlan changed that. "I want to introduce someone," he said. "He's new here, but not new to me." The room hushed. Heads turned. "This is Ryan Mercer," Harlan said, voice calm but resonant. "He's joining us in a temporary role, but he's here for reasons deeper than resumes." Ryan froze. Blood drained from his face. "He's also my son." It was quiet for a beat too long. Then the buzz began. Murmurs. Stares. Harlan stepped aside like he'd just dropped a pebble into a still lake and had no idea the ripples would reach every shore. Ryan didn't speak. Didn't move. He waited until the crowd dispersed, then walked straight into Harlan's office, the door clicking shut behind him. What the hell was that? Harlan sat down slowly, like he'd been expecting this. "I thought it was time." "Time for what?" "To parade me around like some legacy badge." "You had no right." "I was proud." "Proud?" Ryan laughed bitterly. "I've been here 3 weeks, and suddenly I'm your press release." "You're not." "But people were going to find out. I wanted it to come from me, not the gossip." Ryan paced the room. "I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to be looked at like I'm special when I'm not. I'm just a guy trying to learn, and now every eye in this place is measuring me against your name. Because you carry it." "No," Ryan said sharply. "Because you carry it." He stormed out. Took the elevator to the street and didn't stop walking for 4 blocks. That night, Ryan sat on the roof of his apartment building. The city stretched around him in 1,000 points of light. He felt smaller than ever, a grain of sand with a title no one believed he deserved. His phone buzzed. A message from Gina, Harlan's assistant. "He's not himself tonight. Think you should talk to him." Ryan didn't reply. But something about the message stuck. He showed up at the penthouse an hour later. Harlan was in the study, sipping from a glass that wasn't quite full of anything except regret. "I messed up," Harlan said without turning around. "Yeah. I didn't mean to put that pressure on you. I was just proud. I wanted people to know that you're mine. But I'm not. Not yet. Maybe not ever." That hit harder than Ryan intended. Harlan winced. "I didn't grow up in boardrooms," Ryan continued. "I grew up figuring out which bills we could skip without the lights going out. I know how to stretch a can of soup. I know how to fix a car with a YouTube video and luck. I don't belong in your world. Not yet." "Then let me meet you in yours," Harlan said quietly. "Not as a CEO. Just as your father, or at least the man trying to be." Silence. "I don't know how to do this," Ryan admitted. "But I don't want to run anymore." "Neither do I." They didn't hug. Didn't cry. But the space between them softened, not erased, but no longer hostile. For now, that was enough. Fall settled into the city like a soft exhale. The mornings grew colder, the sunsets sharper. Ryan stayed on at the company, not as Harlan's son, he made that clear, but as a staff member rotating through departments. He wanted to earn his place, and Harlan, to his credit, let him. They spoke more often now. Not about the business, usually, that was the easy stuff. They talked about the past in cautious pieces. Harlan admitted to more than just neglect. There were affairs, missed funerals, broken friendships, even a second divorce. He wasn't a villain, not exactly, just a man who had chosen ambition over intimacy, every time. "I thought building this company would make me whole," Harlan said one night over dinner. "Turns out, it just made me busy." Ryan didn't forgive him, not fully. But he understood. And maybe that mattered more. Then, just as things were beginning to feel stable, the past arrived in a tailored suit and expensive shoes. Her name was Camille. Harlan's ex-wife, the second one. Sharp, elegant, and cold as polished marble. She arrived at the office unannounced, demanding a meeting. Ryan was in the hallway when he saw her step out of the elevator. Their eyes met briefly. Hers were calculating. "You must be the project," she said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me." "The intern," she clarified, with a smirk. "Or is it air?" He didn't respond. He didn't have to. Camille walked into Harlan's office like she owned the building. Voices rose behind the closed door. Ryan didn't listen, but he heard enough. She was angry. Furious that Harlan had brought the bastard into the business. That her sons, stepsons now, but legally tied, would be cut out if Harlan made Ryan his successor. "I didn't come back for money," Ryan said to Harlan later that day. "I know." "Then don't make this into a war." "I'm not," Harlan said, tired. "But Camille is. And she's not the only one." The board caught wind of the situation. Rumors swirled. Nepotism. Distraction. Legacy issues. One senior VP resigned quietly. Another began undermining Harlan in meetings. Ryan saw it happening in real time, the cost of his presence. He'd walked into this man's life and pulled on a thread that was now unraveling a 20-year empire. He tried to step back. "I'll quit," he told Harlan. "You can say I wasn't a good fit. Buy me a bus ticket out of LA and I'll disappear." Harlan looked at him like he'd been stabbed. "Don't you dare. You're losing people because of me. I'm finding something more important because of you. I'm not worth your legacy. You're the only thing that might save it." That night, Harlan made a decision. He called an emergency board meeting. Ryan wasn't invited, but he heard about it from Gina. Harlan told them the truth. All of it. That Ryan was his son. That he hadn't known. That he wasn't handing him the company, not now, maybe not ever, but that his presence wasn't up for debate. "If that costs me votes," Harlan said, "then so be it. But I won't erase my son to protect your balance sheets." The room was silent afterward. But not hostile. Something about the vulnerability, the honesty, shook something loose in the room. Later that week, Ryan sat with Harlan in his penthouse. "You did that for me." "No," Harlan said. "I did it for us." Ryan looked out at the skyline. So what now? Now, we keep building. Together. If you want. I don't want your company. Then what do you want? Ryan turned to him, the city lights reflected in his eyes. A family. Harlan didn't speak. He just reached across the space between them and put a hand on Ryan's shoulder. Not as a boss. Not as a billionaire. As a father. Months passed. Ryan stayed. Not in the shadow of Harlan's wealth, but alongside him, navigating the complex terrain of a father-son relationship that had no childhood to lean on. They were building something without blueprints, equal parts fragile and resilient. The whispers at work eventually faded. People got used to seeing them in the same room without tension. Some even started seeking out Ryan's opinion, not because of his last name, but because he'd proven he listened before he spoke. That he showed up early. Stayed late. Asked the right questions. One day, Harlan handed him a folder. What's this? Ryan asked. Ownership restructuring. Not majority, I'm not giving you control. But a real stake. Something that says this isn't just mine anymore. Ryan opened the folder, scanned the numbers, the clauses. I don't want this. You've earned it. Not yet. And when I do, I want to buy in. No gifts. No shortcuts. Harlan smiled. Stubborn. Like your mother. She raised me that way. That night, Harlan didn't push. He simply nodded, and they shared a quiet drink on the balcony, watching the city breathe. In January, Ryan returned to Bakersfield, not for closure, this time, but for connection. He started a mentorship program at his old high school, now reopened thanks to a private grant Harlan made in Linda Mercer's name. He didn't tell the kids he was the CEO's son. He told them he used to walk the same halls. Used to eat lunch alone. Used to think success was for someone else's family. They listened. Some of them saw themselves in him. And for the first time, Ryan saw himself not as a product of abandonment, but as proof that broken beginnings didn't have to mean broken endings. Harlan aged that year. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet slowness that comes with letting go of things long clenched too tightly. He worked less. Traveled more. Sometimes he showed up at the mentorship program, sat in the back, and watched Ryan talk to kids like their futures mattered. You're doing more good here than I ever did in boardrooms, Harlan said one evening, driving back to LA. You gave me the road, Ryan replied. I just walked it. They didn't always agree. Old habits took time to die. Harlan still checked his stock ticker too often. Ryan still bristled at anything that felt like control. But they learned how to apologize. How to stay in the room when things got hard. By spring, Ryan launched a startup, small, purposeful, rooted in community instead of conquest. Harlan invested, but quietly, with no strings. At the launch event, Ryan gave a short speech. No slides. No suits. He told the story, not all of it, but the shape of it. A kid without a father. A man with too many regrets. And how, against odds and old wounds, they'd found their way toward each other. He ended with a line that silenced the room. Legacy isn't a name or a building. It's the people we choose to show up for, even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy. Harlan was in the front row. And for the first time, he cried without shame. Years later, after Harlan passed, quietly, in his sleep, with Ryan reading beside him, the company released a brief statement. But Ryan wrote something else. Something not for press releases or investors. He wrote a letter. To the men who left, and still showed up. To the father I met as a stranger. You didn't save me. You saw me. And that was enough. Rest easy. We're good. And for the first time, truly, they were.